In Venezuela, the re-elected President Nicolas Maduro denounced the destabilizing plan of the international extreme right wing that sought to create chaos in the country after the presidential elections held on July 28th. During a press conference, Maduro expressed that the country is in peace thanks to measures taken in the face of the vandalism perpetrated by some groups financed and trained by the international extreme right. In this sense, the national president assured that the country will not fall into the hands of fascism and international imperialism. At the same time, he stated that if these events continue, he will call the people to a new revolution with different characteristics to the one that has been known in the country for 25 years. During a press conference, the president announced that he went to the Supreme Court of Justice to ask the Electoral Court to proceed to investigate everything that happened on July 28th and after this day.
I went to the Maximum Court of Justice so that the Electoral Hall proceed to pronounce the resolution of the electoral of Sunday, 28th of July, and to decide from the point of view of investigation, technical investigation, and institutional and judicial, and from the point of view of the Venezuelan laws, to decide what happened on the 28th of July and after the 28th of July, and to establish with clarity and legal sentence the results, the definite results that made me winner of the election on the July 28th, including all the steps of audits, all the audit steps that were made. In Venezuela, there are 16 audits, and all those 16 audits were made, all the audits were made.
At the press conference, the president also demanded the release of all records related to the presidential elections.
So I have demanded immediately the Electoral Court has all the diligence to obtain all the legal data, of the National Electoral Council, all the investigations of the Attorney General, and also to demand the information to the 10 candidates, presidential candidates, one by one, to the 38 political parties, and ratified to the press today with this long introduction that the great patriotic pole and the Socialist Unity Party of Venezuela are ready to deliver all the voting registers of all the 100% of the tables to this Electoral Court when it's demanded by the Electoral Court.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro went on Wednesday to the Supreme Court of Justice and filed a writ of amparo before the Electoral Chamber of said court to validate the election of July 28th. There he was received by the President of the highest court, Magistrate Carislia Rodriguez, also President of the Electoral Chamber, to whom he handed the document. He did so in the company of the Attorney General of the Republic, Reinaldo Muñoz. The rights for the Electoral Chamber to address this attack on the electoral process and make clear everything that needs to be clarified. President Maduro pointed out that 100% of the tally sheets of the past elections will be made available. He affirmed that he is willing to publicly present all the tally sheets of the votes cast in the elections, the results of which are disputed by the extreme opposition.
It would be maybe the most criminal act till nowadays. I said it on time. Some people didn't believe because they say believe to see to believe, and as Saint Thomas said, bless the ones who believe without seeing, but bless the ones who see and believe. And let's be united, those all. Let's be united all. It is a criminal act, not only because of the violence, but criminal for as they search for criminals to attack, burn people alive and burned public sectors as health facilities to threaten life of the families, to burn markets and companies, vehicles, and attacked their own people. And this is all directed by a perverse and criminal group.
The constitutional president of Venezuela ratified his willingness to collaborate in the investigation of the electoral chamber regarding his victory in the presidential elections of Sunday, July 28th.
And I have said that I am willing to be summoned, to be interrogated at all forms, be investigated by the electoral chamber as presidential candidate, winner of July 28 elections, and as head of state. I submitted to justice, and I have said beyond, as head of politics and revolutionary leader of Venezuela and son of Commander Chavez, that the great patriotic Paul and the United Socialist Party is ready to present all polling stations, all ballots, and I hope that the electoral chamber does the same with every candidate and every party.
Also in Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro presented an array of measures to crack down violent acts committed by fascist far-right groups known as comanditos. During a joint meeting with the Council of State and the National Defense Council, the Venezuelan president explained the main initiative, which entails the creation of a $10 million economic fund to support victims affected by the far-right violence. In addition, authorities agreed on setting a special commission led by lawmaker Jorge Rodriguez, which plays the role of defending Venezuelan public opinion to counter attacks and speeches full of hate and violence on outlets and social media. In terms of citizen security, they will implement a special scheme with the framework of the second phase of the Republic plan that involves the Bolivarian National Armed Forces and the police forces in a joint project with the Cuadrantes, the Paz and the Popular Power to patrol and protect streets, avenues, urbanizations and communities from the threat of the comanditos groups. Both councils were united to appoint Diosdado Cabello and Minister Remigio Ceballos Ichazo in charge of monitoring this special plan. These actions represent a comprehensive effort by the Venezuelan government to address violence and protect the population from attacks by these criminal groups. On Tuesday in Venezuela, members of the criminal group known as Tren de los Llanos, at the service of the far right, attacked again state institutions. In this regard, Venezuelan Public Prosecutor's Office indicated that the events occurred in the municipality of José Tadeo Monagas in Altagracia state of Guarico, in the center of the country. The violent men arrived on motorcycles and attacked a dependency attached to the mayor's office. It is worth mentioning that this criminal organization, which is accused of serious crimes related to murder, rape, torture, drug trafficking and human trafficking, joins the list of criminal groups hired by the extremist opposition led by María Corina Machado and Edmundo González. On Wednesday, the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, addressed the actions of the far-right groups seeking to tarnish the results of the July 28th elections. In this sense, William Saab pointed out that, as they had been warning for months, there were plans of the extreme right wing to declare the election as a fraud after July 28th and began with terrorist acts throughout the nation. On the other hand, William Saab pointed out that the Public Ministry is investigating each of these criminal groups and assured that 20 subjects were apprehended for crimes that included attacks on military officials. Furthermore, he also emphasized that the far right is using a structured group of organized crime known as El Tren del Llano, associated to paramilitary groups.
I want to give a preliminary report, a preliminary one, about the actions that I am mentioning there, all linked to the actions that I am mentioning there. Up to this moment we have arrested 1,062 people. If, some of them, according to previous investigations, are proved to have no participations in these actions despite of being there. We have a justice system and fair trials, so they will be released. However, those found responsible, as the ones I am showing, all of them are responsible, will be sentenced to many years of prison.
And the Attorney General ruled out the participation of social unions and student movements during the guarimbas.
In relation to what I'm saying, I could highlight a breaking point in what they have tried this time. This time you don't see, no one can point out to me that have seen, in these guarimbas, in these brutally negative actions, students, for example, or members of a trade union, or again a social movement protesting against an alleged fraud.
International observers reaffirmed transparency in Venezuela's presidential elections as well as the effectiveness of the electoral system. The joint preliminary report highlights the normality of the electoral process in full guarantee of the citizens' right to vote in peace and in organized manner, for which they recognize the work of the National Electoral Council. They further praised the Republic plan for thoroughly conducting the citizen security and the custody of the electoral material without any kind of incidents. Likewise, they congratulate the Venezuelan people who, despite multiple pressures and interfering actions, gave an example of civility during the peaceful, orderly and transparent exercise of their right to vote. The Argentine and American Jurist Associations, the Chilean Human Rights Commission, among other organizations, denounced the siege of the Venezuelan embassy in Buenos Aires, which they described as an unacceptable violation of the Vienna Convention.